Welcome to sunny Malaga here on Nobby on Cars, where we're taking a look today at the all-new Jeep Avenger. Jeep is a brand that might seem a little bit unusual, maybe even unfamiliar if you're of a certain age. However, in Ireland in the 90s and noughties, the Cherokee, the Grand Cherokee, the Wrangler Jeep, they were all highly desirable cars and Jeeps from the Jeep brand. Now Jeep are back and they're under the Stellantis umbrella, which own a huge amount of really famous automotive brands. If you're not sure of which, Google them. So this is a fully electric EV. It has ground clearance. It has snow and mud mode, so it still has some of the heritage of Jeep and what they stand for, but this is an EV that can also double up as a city car. Now, just sticking with the front of it, there is a lot of plastic around the front and the sides of the car. That is on purpose. One of the demonstrations today was, for example, if you were to scuff this in a car park, you wouldn't ruin your lovely yellow bumper, you'd just catch the plastic, which is much cheaper to replace. So that's a benefit, although avoiding pillars in car parks is always still, a good idea. On the front grille, these aren't obviously solar panels, but they do give that look of solar, so you get an idea that there's something electrified going on. And there is. It's a 54 kilowatt hour battery. It will do a range of up to 400 kilometers, and like so many cars under Stellantis in this battery and motor, it'll do 100 kilowatt charging if you can find that type of charging speed. This particular car today is covered in dust because Jeep brought us on a dust and dirt track to demonstrate how much grip this car has, because there's a couple of different modes, including snow and mud. And snow mode and mud can actually operate at really high speeds, some up to 120 kilometers per hour. So more of that ruggedness continues down the side of the vehicle. You can see like the ground clearance here, just because we're up on a bit of a hill. So plenty of plastic here again to keep things cheaper if you hit them off things. 18-inch alloy wheels. The charging port is on this side. Obviously DC charging is available here. It has an 11 kilowatt onboard charger. If you can get on-street charging and stuff like that, you'll charge it in relatively decent enough time. But the key point is 100 kilowatt charging as standard. You don't need to go for any optional extras to get that. So the boot of the car is, considering it's a ground-up EV, the boot could be a little bit bigger. It's hovering around mid 300s, and weirdly the Opel Mokka is smaller and the DS3, which all come with the same family, is a little bit bigger. So it's a weird combination of boot size. If you'd imagine, it'll do the week's shopping, but you're not going to fit a load of suitcases in here. Back of the Avenger is reasonably dark, depending on spec that you go for. Now, it does have a white headliner in the roof, which is okay. A couple of things: that space of the door, particularly with the housing around the rear wheel, it is a little bit tight to get in and out of. If you're a larger person, that will be, slightly difficult to get in and out of. It is slightly elevated though, as a car, as we've mentioned, so that might make getting in easier in and out of the car. Now, also, rear legroom is a little bit of a compromise depending on how tall your driver is going to be. So if you'd imagine smaller children will be fine here, I think putting teenagers in the back of this car, things could get a little bit cramped. So if you regularly carry adults, you might want to hang on for the Cherokee or something like that. But as a city car, and again comparable with the Mokka and some of the offerings from Toyota in this segment, it's kind of comparable, but it is a little bit of a tight squeeze. You get a USB-C charging port back here also, and no center armrest. Now, what I like about the front of the Avenger is they've obviously shared a lot of platforms and parts and interior with other cars from Stellantis. So, there are certain buttons that would resemble something from Peugeot or Peugeot or Opel. But what's interestingly enough, the steering wheel and just the bright colours throughout the dash, and these light up for ambient lighting, and even the centre screen is a little bit different. So they've put the effort into making sure that it doesn't look exactly like a 2008 from Peugeot or similar. And there's 20 inches, over 20 inches of screen in this car. So 10.25 for the tablet, and you've got this large instrument display which gives you your range and your modes and your efficiency and all the usual things that you'd expect to get. But as I said, I do like that they've made it, different enough, unique enough as an offering, because that's something that can happen, particularly with wider groups of cars. Skoda, Volkswagen, lots of parts can look the same, but as long as there's enough little subtle tweaks to give a car its own unique identity, I think that is important. Then here you have a centre area, loads of space for charging things and storing things. This little clip cover pulls out. You can wipe that and wash it, and it has a little E on it to signify that the car is fully electric, and it has a nice pattern on the back, and that can fold up depending on whatever way you want it. And there's a magnet on it as well, so it's handy for keeping things out of sight. Plenty of buttons for climate and shortcuts for maximum heating and rear window demisting, and they've again kept that up. There's a brilliant floating shelf here for storage of phones and space for your passengers to store things if you're carrying somebody also. So I think a nice bright fun interior, particularly with this colour, obviously in this kind of goldy yellow, really brightens up the interior with this strip that goes right across the front of the dashboard. Now, as I try and descend down this hill that I filmed on today, it's a good thing to remember that there is hill descent. So once your incline or decline is greater than 5%, the car will brake itself for you coming down. And it's done a superb job there. In fact, it said to go into neutral, and I didn't, but it still worked fine. So that is impressive to have in a vehicle like this. Other thing that I noticed today, and always with electric cars, there's a lot of torque going through the front wheels, and on dustier surfaces, yes, it at times struggled for a little bit of grip, but you know what, it was always under control. The traction did its job, and it kind of just got on with life. So like it's not the most off-road vehicle you're ever going to be behind the wheel of, granted, but it's very capable for what probably, you know, 99% of things that this car will be asked to do in its lifetime. So you don't get full power until you're in sport mode. That does give you that shove in the back feeling. The eco mode reduces air conditioning and further power. There's normal city driving, but if you do want to use your full power because you need to get out of a situation or whatever it may be, if you kick down in the accelerator, like kick down function in an automatic car, as soon as you plant it, even if you're in normal mode, it will still burst into life and give you that extra power. And that's kind of reassuring to know that that is there. It's hard to know, you know, compared to Irish specs and stuff like that, how this is going to compare. You've got blind spot on this, you've got nav. The only thing you don't have is a head-up display. Now you do need to remember to turn off that hill descent, because if you're going down the hill as it was there, the car is braking when you probably don't want to necessarily brake. I think 150 brake horsepower in a car like this is sufficient. It just about manages to have enough grip, handle well. It's got a kind of a sporty drive to it. So if I accelerate here and just overtake a couple of things, it quickly bursts into life. Going into a corner, there's tons. It does oversteer a little bit, but there's plenty of grip for, again, I mean, pushing the car beyond the limitations of what most people would do. So, you know, it is absolutely fine and well up to the job. You can plug in your CarPlay and all that stuff and mess around with that if you want, or use the sat-nav from TomTom. Now, I will say, the sat-nav, the way it kind of zooms in and out of junctions, missed a couple of turns today. Now, I'm in unfamiliar territory, fair enough, but still, I'd like the sat-nav to be a little bit quicker and kind of zoom in to give more detail at times, because you're coming to a roundabout, it's like, is it that exit or is it the other one, or what exactly am I doing here? It's got a good little city car vibe to it, but as I mentioned, you know, there are worse things you could try and take off-road, or get a bit of stuck in muck, or if we did have a cold winter or stuff like that, I feel like the Avenger would be up to the job. Same idea for overtaking a truck here on a hill, just does it with ease. The indicator has a weird, it's like a snare drum, that would get annoying. It's like, what? Stop now, please stop. And the rear legroom, They're kind of the main points that, I mean, it's my first drive of the car, but they're the main kind of negatives that stick out. The boot could be a little bit bigger, and the rear legroom could definitely be a little bit bigger. And even the opening for the door is a little bit tight, and the sat-nav. They're the kind of three main things that have kind of made me go, oh, that's a bit strange today. But I tell you what, if Jeep managed to price this correctly, this is a funky looking EV. It's bright, it's different. It doesn't look like, you know, a lot of other cars on the road, so it's got that kind of little bit of uniqueness. And there's plenty of safety on board. Obviously, again, it depends what pack and specs we get in Ireland. Efficiency is also good. So this car has been doing 15 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers today. And that's motorway, mountains, hills, test drives from various other people. Now it is 22 degrees here in Spain today, so ideal temperatures for an EV. But 15 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers is not bad at all. So if you're in the market for an EV and you don't like to have a car that's 10 a penny in the car park in Tesco, and you want something that is a little bit different, and maybe someone goes, oh, that's nice, what's that? And you can explain, well, it's Jeep, but you know, they're from this big company called Stellantis. I think you'll be into something a little bit funky, a little bit different. And handling wise, for an EV with a load of batteries, that's also an impressive feat to make it kind of perform and drive as well as it does. Not saying it's a Mazda MX-5, but you know, it's not bad at all, considering it's a somewhat elevated position of car and you have a lot of batteries underneath. Price, price, price though, that is what it comes down to. And with the EV grant squeezing out all the time with our Irish government, the big question is, can this car be affordable? Can it be in and around some of the Chinese offerings? That, in my opinion, is where this car needs to be. The stuff coming from BYD, the Aura Funky Cat. This car can't really be, it's a more familiar badge in this territory in the world, I'll give you that, but it can't afford to be massively ahead in terms of price, because if it does, it will just be left behind. But as an all-round package and something that's a little bit quirky, I have to say, I'm a fan. The main question with the Avenger is, what is the price going to be? Still no Irish prices just yet. Very familiar with this type of motor and battery because I've driven it in things like the E208 and many of the cars from the group, so we know that part is solid. It's actually been surprisingly fun to drive today. I wasn't sure exactly how a front-wheel drive car, I mean 150 brake horsepower, it's not going to set the world on fire, but even on dusty tracks there was still grip, and that's important. And it's got a nice kind of flat handling sense to it. It's not particularly heavy in corners, so dare I say it, it's another EV that is actually a little bit of fun to drive, has a bit of a sporty edge to it. Yep, the boot is a bit compromised, the rear is also a bit compromised. If they aren't the biggest parts of criteria in a car for you, then you'll be fine. If they are, it's definitely worth checking one out in a showroom before you decide what exactly you're going to do. But it really does come down to price. I mean, to a certain age group, my age group and above, Jeep is probably a very familiar brand. To others, it's another name on the market, which is not a bad thing, and it's going to change an awful lot over the next few years with all the stuff that we will see brands from China. So to be, it's not that it's a new name, but again, just depending on who this car is aimed at, if it's a younger person, it may not be a name that they're totally familiar with. But it's a solid all-rounder, an enjoyable, fun car to drive, a great city car with some off-road credentials if they ever come in handy. Maybe you're going to EP some weekend, at least you know, chances are you won't get stuck in the mud in this. So thank you very much for coming this far with me today on the video here in Malaga in Spain. It was actually raining earlier on. If you want to support the channel, you can hit up buymeacoffee.com/NobbyOnCars. We'll review this car in full when it lands in Ireland. But for now, thank you very much for watching.